everybody, and welcome to Deaf Talks, brought to you by the NTI, the National Transformation Initiative. My name is Alex Jordan, and it's my honor to host this event today, where we meet and greet three members of the deaf community of Barbados. I am thrilled to be sitting beside Bonnie Leonce, who is the expert, the know-how of all things deaf and translation related. So delighted to have her here to work with us this special afternoon. I would like to mention someone who's in the room, but whom you cannot see. Maria Holder-Small is an NTI archivist, works with NTI diligently and represents people with disabilities. So thank you to Maria Holder-Small for making this happen today and letting us meet members of the deaf community. Now to our star guests here this afternoon, from your left to right, I believe. On the left in the maroon is Mr. Anthony Marshall. Anthony is a teacher's assistant. He's very outgoing, loves playing board games with his family. And we'll hear more about his story shortly, because it's a very interesting one. Beside him, we have Soraya Howard. Soraya loves a good joke and making people laugh, and calls Canada a second home. Also very interesting. We'll hear more from her this afternoon. And lastly, but not leastly, Mr. Dwayne Clark, who wants all that the world has to offer. Loved that part of his CD. He has a Bachelor of Science from UE in Economics and Finance, so fascinating as well to hear from him. Well, let's start, shall we? Let's start in the order that we introduced our guests. Mr. Anthony Marshall, you're up first. We learned many things about you from your CV, but I want you to tell us a bit about when you first lost your hearing. What was the story?
Okay, when I was a youngster, maybe about 5 years old or so, I went to a hearing school. You know, I was like a normal kid, just playing around and everything. And then I realized that my teacher was saying, Anthony, Anthony, and I wasn't hearing anything. And so then I realized that, you know, a bit later, my hearing was deteriorating and I became sick. About 5, 6 years old. And when I was 7 years old, I went back to the hearing school, but it wasn't the same. It had deteriorated too much. So the teacher was saying, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Do you want to read my lips? And I was trying to understand. They put me near to the front of the class so I would be able to hear the teacher better, you know, doing math and addition and subtraction. And I was trying to look at the board and figure out what everything that was going on. And, you know, I felt a little down because, you know, maybe it was my deafness that was preventing me from understanding. So then I had to move to another school. It was a school for the deaf. And so, you know, it was a deaf school. But I didn't understand anything because I didn't know sign language. So it was really interesting for me. And I had to tell the teacher, you know, I don't understand what is being said. What's the sign for bathroom? And they would say, you want to go to the bathroom? And then I learned, well, yes, this is the sign for bathroom. So it was a slow progression, but then I began to understand more and realize that all these students were just like me. And you know, it wasn't just myself, but it was a good experience to be with people who were deaf like me. You know, I'm from a hearing family. I have hearing friends, and you know, we would have conversations, and people would sometimes, you know, say, use the term deaf and dumb. And I would say, you know, that's not a good thing to say. And I wouldn't respond to people like that. But in the future, I really would hope that deaf people move forward and other hearing people will learn to respect and, you know, see us as equal.
Fantastic, fascinating story. You were so young, and you were leaving a school that no longer fit you, moving to a school into which you did not yet fit. How did you manage those emotions? How did your family manage it?
So then, you know, my family had a sign language book, and there was a book called The Joy of Signing. That's an old book. And, you know, we would open the book and learn different things, the sign for bathroom and bed, and then, you know, it would be my mother who would really be really into the signing, and then my brother started to learn a little bit more, and then other friends started to learn sign language and learn how to communicate with me, and I was like, okay, great, they're learning, and I was fine with that.
It's fantastic. We're going to come back to you, Anthony. Thank you. We move on to my friend Soraya Howard. Soraya, there wasn't any information in your write-up as to your journey. Were you born deaf? Can you tell us a bit about your upbringing?
No, I wasn't born deaf.
So when did you?
There's a name for it. I was sick, but I can't remember how to spell the actual name of the sickness that I had.
So how old were you when you lost your hearing?
I was a baby.
Oh, okay.
I was still a baby.
Okay, and did you go to any special schools? Can you tell us about your education?
I went to the Irving Wilson School. Before it was called the School for the Deaf and Blind. I think it was 3 years old. I really didn't know any signs either. I just kept looking around, wondering what people were doing with their hands. And then I had a teacher called Miss Ford. She taught me how to sign, and I learned then sign language. I learned how to sign from her actually.
Obviously, it would be wonderful when you learn sign that you can communicate with other members of the deaf community. But was it also fun because it looks very expressive? You use the face, you use the body, you use the hands. I like them.
Definitely.
Can you tell us a bit about the work you do?
I work at an establishment called Tower Cafe. That's in Wildy. You know, I make coffee, do different kinds of cooking in the kitchen and different things like that. Sometimes maybe I have to wash some of the dishes, bring them out. Everything is involved. I do it all.
And your colleagues, your hearing colleagues, how do they communicate with you and you with them?
So when I first joined there, I had to use my voice, but it was kind of awkward. And you know, there are people there who didn't know me, so I had to write back and forth. But then later on, one girl whose name is Runisha, she learned some sign language and, you know, good signs, and we were able to communicate with each other through signs. The others, they don't know, but they try, and they try to lip read me, and I try to lip read them as well to understand what they're saying. But sometimes I admit it's really hard to communicate because I just have to say, can you repeat? Can you repeat? I don't understand, and it can be frustrating at times. Other times it's frustrating, other times it's not.
When we spoke with Anthony, he mentioned he hates the expression deaf and dumb. So it is interesting. I'm going to ask the questions that I think people at home would like to know. You mentioned, Soraya, you tried to sound your voice at first at work and you felt it was awkward. Having never had hearing, what is the relationship that a deaf person has with their voice, the sounding their voice?
There are some people who can read lips well and others who don't. And there's some people, especially depending on their family, who would use their voice, or there's some friends who would use their voice, but you know, it differs depending on that deaf person.
Interesting, fascinating. Okay, we'll come back to you, Soraya. Let's involve Dwayne Clark here. Dwayne, I mentioned, has a Bachelor of Science from UE in Economics and Finance. Lost his hearing in his early teens. When one is in their early teens, it is already a self-conscious experience coming into puberty. How did you cope? Losing or your hearing diminishing?
I call it had been a change for me. That it has become a new reality, right? And it has been a part where I come to learn to accept it, in terms with my family support, and everyone. My grandmother, for example, like an aunt as well, and some of my cousins and my uncle, they all play a part in helping me accepting myself. Also, I think accountability for that new change of losing my hair. And I can tell you it has not been easy. But I'm very thankful for the support system I've got to. Yeah.
I need to ask you, Dwayne, you are a very academic man. Why have you not learned to sign?
Yes, I would love to learn sign language. I really, really, really love to learn sign language. So it can make communication very easier for me, right? As well as all of us as well. I also would like to encourage the general public to learn sign language, because one day, anyone can meet a deaf person, right? And the person will need to communicate with a deaf person to navigate what is the paradigm. Yes, yeah, I would love to learn it, and it's one of my goals to learn sign language.
It's useful, it's very beautiful. I find it looks beautiful. Well, I can tell you at home, I can tell you all here, nti.org.bb. There is a free course available for you called Introduction to Sign Language, hosted by our very own Bonnie Leonce. Simple.
That's the opportunity I would not miss.
Right, exactly.
I would not miss this opportunity.
Great, glad to hear it. Okay, Anthony, let's go back to you. Now, you did a lot of schooling. You went as well to the Irving Wilson School, and then you went to college in, is it Mount Aloysius? Can you tell me where that was and how that experience was for you?
Okay, Mount Aloysius is in Crescent, Pennsylvania. That's in the US. I really didn't know about or have any idea about studying, but then my family told me about an opportunity, and there was a contact with my pastor and a friend, and they gave me that information, and they asked if I was interested, and I said sure. So my pastor called again and gave me the information about the college, and I took all that information down, and then I got the opportunity to go. It was a group of us. Bonnie was there as well. She went to that same college. And we went to Mount Aloysius, as I said. It was really big, and it was a really new experience for me. I'd never experienced that before. An institution, a higher institution. It was really different, and it was a really big learning experience. And I remember it was a lot of hearing students. It's a hearing school. There was a hearing university. And there were some teachers I would say morning to, and they would sign back to me. And later, I saw teachers who knew sign, but my experience with the hearing school here was different from going overseas now in that college experience. Now it was real life, it was a real good education, but it was not the same as I was experiencing. And even terms like deaf and dumb, they weren't using, and it was, took a lot of effort. And I really think that government needs to work and help persons with disabilities, help deaf people, because it's our human right to have a good education. And it's not only me that could have that opportunity, but everyone deserves that opportunity as well.
They certainly do. That's beautifully said. You studied business computer applications program. you know the NTI is very involved in trying to encourage Barbadians to become more computer savvy, get online and live in the digital world that exists now. How did your degree help you, and are you working now in that area?
When I came back, I worked, I volunteered, applied for jobs, but I kept hearing no. But now I am at Irving Wilson School, but they're not using the technology like that. And although I'm teaching, I still try to explain some basic things to the children. You know, we do math and we do different things. I try to teach them, and I really, you know, especially when it comes to business, and there are things that are different for them, but it will take a lot of time for them to really pick up on things that I would have learned here to transfer it onto them.
Yes, I would imagine that we in Barbados are a few years behind the US. Soraya, let's get back to you. Tell us about Canada and her experience there. It seems like Canada is your second home. Can you tell us a bit about it?
First time I flew to Canada, I was 2015. It was in 2015. From the time I landed, it was really big. You know, I felt like lost. It was really big, but my boyfriend was with me, and he had to be asking, the directions of where to go and how to get around, and I was always outside because outside was so beautiful. And then I had another deaf friend there who drove for 4 hours, and I was used to the speed of travel and the mode of transportation also. And I met so many deaf people and learned so many new things. And learned about Canada's law, Canadian laws as well. And the laws there are different to here. And I learned some of those laws. I learned, different things, and it was so interesting to learn. And, the culture, everything about Canada. And I really wish I could bring some of that stuff back home here because it's really interesting. We really need to see what we can do as far as implementing certain things. And then in 2017, I went back again. Yeah, and they had a deaf event that I actually went to there, and it was really, really a wonderful experience. I got to learn so much, and different things about their culture. I learned. And I wish some things could just be transferred here to help with the development of Barbados. Things that could help me and help Barbados as well. But I also found that it's starting to be different. And I've flown there for a third time already, but I intend to fly there a fourth time.
Soraya, I have so many questions. I'm going to limit myself to 2. The first question is, how did you initially end up going to Canada? What was the story there? You have family there, or was there something organized, you and your boyfriend?
Canada has a lot of opportunities, and I wanted to see what they had. I just wanted to know what they had. The different opportunities. I just want to know what their process was, how long it would take, I just want to find out. I just want to see if I will be able to fit into that environment.
Beautiful, great. Okay, Dwayne Clark, back to you now. I think for hearing people there is always this idea that if you're deaf, if you lose your hearing, this is a loss. Can you think of ways in which your hearing impairment has enriched your life?
Yeah. Yes, it's true. There's a differences between both of us, right? The non-hearing and the hearing person. There are noises that non-hearing block off, that give us ultimate peace, right? And but in general, we just same, right? But the difference in terms of how we communicate with one another, right? It should not be that difficult, right? It should be more compassionate, opening, right, and more receiving and more patient. It takes a lot of patience between these two, lots of patience, right, and make it easier to achieve basic interactions, basic interaction. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Compassion, listening more carefully. Yeah. You have hearing and communication to 90%. Can you tell us about the 10%? What happens? How do you miss things? How do you cope? So you have 90% hearing and accuracy. I read in your CV, it says you had a hearing aid and could communicate to 90% accuracy.
Yeah. Yes, the hearing aid has helped us so many. Very much, it's very much helpful. Right now, the challenge comes with the hearing aid is that some people were able to express how they speak through their lips. So, for example, I read lips, like all of us, we all read lips, right? We all read lips, right? So the hearing aid helps in terms of volume, that's one, clarity, that's two, right? And we all still need, depending on reading lips, to achieve the overall process of communication, the overall understanding of what is being communicated between a non-hearing and a hearing person, deaf, non-deaf, right? So the hearing aid is, yes, it has been very helpful, right? So the challenge, and back to the challenge again, the challenge is some persons have a very low, high voice, some are very, very low voice. So the challenge falls where we're trying to receive the person who was speaking so low, right? That's one. And that's one. Yeah, and lip reading, another thing, lip reading, some people were able to pronounce certain words inward than the lip, like for example, oranges. You see, you pronounce it through lip, some people say orange. Orange. Yeah, so basically that's where the challenge comes in. So I, as a deaf person, I was able to get that second, that message, what orange that was being said.
Especially a Bajan who would say orange. Yeah. Hard to understand, even for hearing. Yeah. I have a good question for all three of you. Let's talk about technology. You studied technology, Anthony, back in the day. You, Soraya, talked about technology that you saw in Canada. Dwayne, you mentioned in your CV about technology, captioned telephones, etc. Can we just have one example of some good technology for the deaf that would be interesting for us to learn about?
One thing is for people to learn sign language on the computer. I think using the computer in that way, I think people could learn better when they can watch it. I think it can be used in that capacity.
So true. And nowadays we take it for granted. But my parents and my grandparents' generation would have loved the opportunity to learn online. Soraya, what technology did you see up there?
One thing that can help us is video phones for, so if I want a doctor, I can make that call, everything comes up, the interpreter and the doctor and myself, and then we will be able to communicate that way, VRS system. I really don't like to depend on hearing people to call for me. I would prefer to make that call on my own.
Surely that technology exists. Surely some Barbadian can create it, if not. For you, sir, Mr. Dwayne Clark, any technology that you think really worthwhile? You mentioned the hearing aid.
This new hearing aid I'm wearing now, we have there's a features where it can work with cell phone, right? And there's a push of a button behind the hearing aid for us to hear, but it's not very accurate. It's not very accurate, but it helps in some way because everyone has hearing loss is different. My own is clarity, right? So how it becomes challenging for me is that if I knew the person that well, I'm taking right back. That if I know that the person I'm communicating with it on the phone, if I know the person very well and I have listened to how the person pronounces the word, right, so it becomes easier for me. Whereas, however, actually, for a new caller, it will be very challenging. I would say I would receive approximately between 55% or 60% of the message being said to me on the phone, right? So the challenge is not the volume. The person can talk loud, but it's the clarity, what's being said, for me to receive it, to basically send back the right message, right? Yeah, so now to solve this now, I think it's much easier. Like we all have WhatsApp on the cell phone right now, right? And video calls can make it very much easier, right? Video calling very much easier. Also, you can also have video calling with captions on the screen, like some of Zoom meetings are incorporated with captions, right? Which make it very, very much easier for a deaf person to communicate with or be part in the meetings, right? Rather than feel like they are left out, right? Yeah. And I've seen that technology, yes, I'm very happy technology has pushing caption into it.
So interesting. We're having a conversation, guys. Deaf Talks with the NTI, the National Transformation Initiative, and it's been fascinating so far. I'm looking forward to continuing here. Now, I've made the mistake of saying hearing impaired a few times, and I've been corrected. So I'm going to ask my distinguished panel to give us the do's and don'ts of the etiquette around the deaf culture and translation. So let's start, shall we, with Anthony. Anthony, what's your top pet peeve that people do, that hearing people do that we should not, with regards to the deaf community?
One thing that they say, deaf and dumb. Nope, I don't like that. I'm proud to be deaf. My parents and different hearing people, will say the word dumb, but people will say, that word, I say no, that's a word that we don't accept at all. That's not the way how we term ourselves. We want to make sure that people understand that you say deaf when you're speaking about us, but deaf and dumb, mixing those two words together, they don't work for us. And then people say, oh, I get it. We are not supposed to use deaf and dumb together. No, you're not. Just deaf. And hearing impaired? No. People say, oh, you're hearing impaired. No, no, we are not hearing impaired. People say, because maybe you hear a little or you speak a little, but that term hearing impaired, we don't accept. Deaf, period. That's it.
It makes sense because the term hearing impaired suggests that something is not good enough when actually something is only different. As a woman of color, I like to be called a black woman. Some white people get frightened to call me that. And I say, no, 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 I'm a black woman. I'm proud to be black. And if I'm correct, I'm hearing the same thing about deaf. Deaf is the word to use. I'm proud to be deaf. Call me deaf.
Of course.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's your welcome.
So it's thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Soraya, what bothers you that hearing people get wrong about deaf culture? Do's and don'ts for us, please.
Well, like Anthony said, I don't like the word dumb or mute. We don't say that either. People say, you can't talk. And I say, you know, they call me mute. I don't like that. Hearing impaired, those are my top things. I don't like that. I have the right to speak up and say what is acceptable for me and what is not. Deaf, that's it. Not those other terms that people have to think about or make up, but deaf is a symbol of pride, and I'm proud to be deaf. It's a mute and hearing impaired, or you can't talk. Dumb. You know, I've been saying so often, those are not the terms to use. It's time people stop. People need to remember deaf, and that's it. Or hard of hearing. That is acceptable as well.
Hard of hearing. People are not, a lot of hearing people are not exposed enough. And that's why we're having conversations like this one. It's interesting, Soraya, you said people tell you, you can't talk. I think you should tell them, you can't sign. Right?
Then that's what I usually say. And then they're like, oops, have nothing to say about that after.
Correct. Because it's a very sophisticated language from what I can see. Subtle and beautiful. All right, guys, there's a certain theme here. Deaf or hard of hearing, the two ways to refer to members of the deaf community. So you're welcome for that advice. We're gonna go now to Dwayne Clark. Dwayne, I wanna ask you about your work. The deaf community, of course, working within the community, the wider community. You worked in a government ministry in the Spice Isle, Grenada. Can you tell us a bit about that experience and how you managed in a, I would imagine, majority hearing environment?
Yes, working in the government ministry back in Grenada, right? It had been a good and bad experience. The baddest experience is my supervisor, well, yeah, she wasn't exposed so much to, wasn't exposed to deaf person. She wasn't understanding how to communicate with a deaf person. So the whole clouding over the communication is that she saw the frustration.
She was frustrated or you were frustrated?
Yeah, I was very, very frustrated, and she was actually being very hard on me. So it's like she vented her frustration. Yeah, she was venting her frustration on me, right? And she was seeing, that's another part of it, she was actually seeing that my hearing loss, my hard of hearing, my deafness was the reason why I can't be in her space. Right? And going back, it had been very, I can say it's been traumatizing for me. You understand? Because she was actually using labeling still. She was saying stuff like, oh, I called you 3 times and you're not hearing me. And she was saying stuff, I have to go way back. And she was saying very hurtful stuff, you know. And that's what pushed me, you know, to actually further myself, you know, just leave that space. And it has been very, very difficult, very difficult.
So not only did she make you feel separate in your space?
She made me feel that my hearing is a problem, you know. It's something that I can't be in the space. She was actually saying, I'm pretending I'm not hearing. These are one of those things, you know, she's doing. It's very hurtful.
I know it must have been hurtful.
Yeah, it was too much. It was very stressful. I've been complaining so many times.
We can look back on that and realize if she's thinking that your hard of hearing is her problem, then the problem is most definitely hers.
No problem, yeah.
No, true?
It was. She did not take the opportunity to understand or get the depth of the situation. How can you communicate with me? How can you understand me, right? She pushed patience in the whole thing, right? To make the communication interaction much easier, right? She just chose to draw her line and stand on her ground, right? And she did not realize how it affected me, you understand? Yeah, and that was it.
Very interesting. Well, we've heard about some of the don'ts. I would like to hear any good stories you may have about how people interact or things that have happened, which you can give us good examples for people, how to behave with the deaf and within the deaf culture and community.
Okay. One good positive thing that happened in life. My family signs. And you know, I used to teach Irving Wilson. I used to teach sign language as well, and teach to different businesses, and you know, and different students would come, and you know, it'd be good because I want people, families, my family, I want children to be able, you know, if anything happens, just imagine something happens and you became deaf and you know, you'll be hearing all your life. You know, what would you do? So I'm happy about that. I know there are people who would say, you know, I would like to learn some sign language, and I would say, you know, someone would say, oh, my friend will be able to teach you. And I'm really happy that when that happens, when people want to learn, I'm really proud when people say they want to learn my language.
I'm sure you are a good teacher because I see a lot of energy in your body. You were an athlete, Anthony. What sport did you play?
Okay, I was in 2 teams. I was in a red house and blue house. I ran, and I was in the relay as well, and high jump. When it was like 15, 16, 17, 18, you know. Yeah. I was a 3-time champ for my school.
You still look like an athlete.
Now I'm older, but before it was good.
Soraya, any good stories to tell me? Tell us.
I have many hearing friends who are learning to sign. And I teach the basic. They're willing to learn. You know, yes, they're willing to learn, and some there's some people who are really have a negative view either of me or the deaf community, and I'm not teaching them anything. I'm teaching people who are willing to learn for the right reason. But there are people who really don't respect our community, and you know, I have nothing to do with them. I think that's only fair.
We heard from Dwayne that he struggled at his job at the time. Have you had the same experience in your work?
I did struggle, and I had some frustrations as well. And sometimes a lot of stress, like in the kitchen. You know, it's not like my kitchen at home, you know, because I like cooking. But in a work environment, in that kitchen, it can be pretty stressful. You know, sometimes I get a headache, you know, and I want to scream. But I really try my best. I, you know, focus and persevere. There is some stress still, you know, because there's a lot of interaction back and forth. It's a quick and fast-paced environment, so.
Right.
But coffee. I don't like the smell of coffee. You know, it makes me sneeze a lot actually, and it makes me feel sick at times.
You must be the only person in the world. Soraya.
No, not me. I really hate it. I don't like the smell.
Even people who don't like the taste of coffee like the smell of coffee. Anyway, we'll get back to that, Soraya. Thanks for sharing. All right, sir. Dwayne, any great stories, any uplifting ones, any suggestions to people on how they could be better allies for the deaf community?
The first is to get to understand, get to know the deaf community. It's very, very important. So that everyone can be aware of the deaf community and how to communicate with the deaf community, right? And how to approach the deaf person. Also, sign language, very, very absolutely important to understand. Now, yeah, that's one. I would really recommend that the general population get to know the deaf community, to understand them, to know how to communicate with them. Yeah, very, very important. Very. It would be a wonderful opportunity.
It's perfectly put, Dwayne. I've been thinking this week, I've been meditating on this idea that our challenges in life improve us because they make us more understanding of other people's challenges in life. You've mentioned the words patience and understanding. Let's ask all three of you. Anthony, it requires more patience. Do you find the hearing community impatient with deaf people? I'm gonna come to you.
I do find that hearing people can't tend to be patient, but there's some who, for whatever reason, are not. Myself, I am patient. I'm a cool guy. I don't let problems, impact me that much. You know, like how hearing people, every time they hear, like even if the phone ringing, they run and jump and whatever, they seem to be so caught up in that. But I always have my phone on me. I feel it vibrating. Take it out, see what it is, put it back. I feel it vibrating. I don't worry much about those things. I think that's pretty much fair and a fair exchange.
That's fascinating. Someone mentioned earlier about deafness being peace as well. You don't have all the intrusion of noise. Now, Anthony mentions he finds hearing people a bit controlled by their phone. Soraya, any thoughts on that? On things that you feel maybe the hearing community are caught up on that the deaf community is not?
Okay, so when I'm at work, the phone will be there. I see the phone ring, but I can't talk on the phone. And I say, answer the phone. You say you're talking to me. You can't be talking to me. You can't be telling me to answer a phone. But you go and answer the phone. Answer the phone yourself. And they were like, it's not fair, you can't talk on the phone. And we're the ones that have to talk on the phone. I said, well, I can't hear, so I can't talk on the phone. I was like, answer the phone. But you're right there with the phone. I said, that's not my problem, I'm deaf. You see the phone? It's your job to answer it. So they have no choice but to go and answer the phone. What am I supposed to do?
Are they making sport with you, or do they forget that you can't answer the phone really?
Yeah, they're laughing, but they're laughing. But I keep telling them, the phone is ringing. I can't hear. Answer it yourself. So, guess it's a joke.
Nice one, Anthony. When I asked Dwayne, when I asked the question initially, you wanted to say something.
Yelling is
Yelling.
my observations and experiences yelling, right? And I yelling to get the message, right? But we're yelling at, when it's supposed to be pronouncing the word through lip, that's the clarity again. The clarity comes in. Because if the person yells, right, and I as a deaf person, I don't get the message. Right, so it's very important that the person to pronounce it through the lip, so I can pick up the message, I can understand what's being said to me. Right. Now, I forgot to mention a part, since sensitivity, I'm very sensitive, absolutely strongly sensitive. So, I learn now to navigate that yelling process in it, even though I receive it as a negative feedback, you know what I mean, right? If you yell, I just shouting, right? It comes across as an attack, you know what I mean, right? And I'm sensitive. I'm sure we all are sensitive here, and deaf persons are sensitive, because that's how we survive in that environment, I can give you another example, I could be sitting here and a loudspeaker going outside there, and I'm not having my hearing aid, but I can feel the vibration, so I will get the impression that it's noise out there. So that's where the sensitivity comes in. Right? That's another way. Right? Yeah, so the yelling now, they have to, it's all about communication, Yelling is just not going to help. It's not going to make communication easy. Yeah.
It's a no-no.
Yeah.
It's a very important point.
Yeah.
That clarity
yeah.
and enunciation
yeah.
is more important than volume.
Yeah.
Volume also communicates frustration
True.
from the speaker,
Yeah.
right? Because as a hearing person, I don't like when people shout either. I grew up in a house where my mother and father did not raise their voices. So on the road, I get startled when people are loud too. Interesting. I want to ask both Anthony and Soraya about sensitivity. Dwayne made an interesting point. Can you talk to us about the added sensitivity of a deaf person? What that is like, what you notice that hearing people might not?
Okay, so before when I was younger, you know, and I became deaf, I would speak a lot, and it was a challenge for me to lip read. And, you know, I went to therapy and I tried it, and, you know, I tried it, and sometimes it worked, and it was, I would say, you know, I would say, good morning, and how are you? And are you okay? But the quickness of the speech, you know, it's easier to speak normally to a deaf person, and, you know, even to try to understand what someone's trying to say to me. But I know that's a challenge. That really is a challenge for me. When people don't open their mouths and talk to me, you know, that's a problem for me. I need to open your mouth and speak. If you're talking, open your mouth. Why you're speaking so soft? I want you to open your mouth so I'll be able to understand what you're saying. And stop speaking so quickly. I need you to just be normal. Treat us as normal. It's better. And that frustrates deaf people because then we aren't able to understand what you're saying. And also, people who are talking behind our backs. I mean, we're deaf and you're behind there talking. And sometimes people say negative things behind our back. And you look back and they say, oh, I'm not saying that, I wasn't saying anything, I don't like that. You're being disrespectful. If you have something to say, if you have something to tell me, tell me. If you have something to say, tell me. You know, I have eyes that can look back and see, and I'll be able to catch what you're saying and understand what you're saying. So don't talk behind my back.
Yes, and your senses are heightened. You have other senses where you can feel almost what is going on behind you. Can't trick you.
Right.
Very interesting. Soraya, I just want to say as well, I laughed at what you said because Bajans speak so quickly and do not open their mouths. And I was thinking, when I first met you, I don't understand sign, but this woman communicates so clearly. So even though I couldn't understand what you're saying, you are communicating to me clearly in a way that Barbadians do not with our dialect. Okay, so I just want to do a final thing because this is brilliant. I hope that you're enjoying at home as much as I am. This is Deaf Talks, having a conversation with three incredible members of the deaf community here in Barbados. Compliments nti.org.bb, the National Transformation Initiative. Of course, that's a website where you can sign up for free courses, but it's also a movement where we are developing a better Barbadian, a more well-rounded citizen. And one of the areas, of course, has to be more knowledge and awareness of the lives of people with disabilities. So today, Deaf Talks, you understand? We're talking with three members of the deaf community. One last thought to Barbadians, direct to camera, a kind of takeaway from our conversation today. One thing to leave us with And we can start with Anthony. One of the takeaways of the day for people.
I think it's important that you need to educate and include sign language into education. You can go to class and you need to improve yourself. Children who are deaf, you need to feel proud to be deaf. Family members need to learn how to sign as well.
Brilliant. Come to think of it, how is it possible we don't teach sign language in school? I mean, how is that even possible? Soraya, what is your takeaway?
I want to tell all Barbadians, remember, the words are deaf and hard of hearing. We're not dumb and we're not hearing impaired. And we're not mute. So remember that. That's what I want you to know.
Soraya has been very clear about this. Barbados, do it for me. I got the mistake wrong earlier. I want y'all to do it for me. Brilliant. Great takeaway. Dwayne, what do you leave us with? What would be your one last thing to tell the world about being deaf?
I would like the world to get to know us, to get to understand us, right? And that communication is not difficult. It is how to communicate. It's how, you understand? It's not difficult. We are not difficult. We are human beings, you know. We all need to be inclusive. The world is changing every single day. You know, technology comes. You know, all these things is changing. It's rapidly changing. So there's no room for the way of past thinking, and the past thinking of in excluding disabled person. It don't come anymore. We need to revolutionize from that way of thinking and to be inclusive. We are, you know, a human. We all need to be, you know, together. The togetherness, you know, right? You know, a person should not be excluded because of their disability, their differences. No, we all need one another. We all going to interact with one another. You understand?
It's a beautiful thought. And I want to take it one step further by saying, not only should people with disabilities not be excluded, but rather I would like Barbadian society to realize that including people with disabilities adds value to our community, enriches our community, improves our sensitivity, our awareness, our skill set. True or false? Thank you, Dwayne. I want to thank you, Dwayne Clark. I want to thank you, Soraya Howard. I want to thank you, Anthony Marshall. You have been
You're welcome.
Wonderful conversationalists. I have learned a lot. I hope everybody at home has too. I want to thank the inimitable Bonnie Leonce, who has been brilliant in interpreting my very convoluted questions. And I also want to mention a very impressive husband and wife team behind the camera. We have Dario and Joy, who are brilliant. Dario is a cameraman and director, producer. He is deaf, and Joy, his wife, is hard of hearing, and they're both behind the camera making things happen for this production. So big up to that husband-wife production team and all of the National Transformation Initiative team doing such good work. And it's been a delight for me to have this conversation today. Thank you, and bye for now.